inside Raiford Prison, Florida, where executions happen. For decades, one place in Florida has carried a reputation unlike any other prison in the state. It is a place where some of the nation's most violent killers spend their final years. A place where silence often means something terrible is about to happen. Behind these walls, life sentences are common, but for some men, every passing day is simply another step toward an execution chamber only a few hundred feet away. Many prisons lock people away from society. Raiford became known for something even darker. It became the place where Florida carries out the ultimate punishment. And what happens behind these fences is far more complicated than most people ever imagine. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe for more real prison documentaries based on verified history and documented events. Also, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel around the world. Now, to understand why Raiford became one of America's most feared prisons, we have to go back nearly a century. Because this story didn't begin with executions. It began with Florida's search for control. And what happened next shaped the state's entire correctional system. A prison hidden in the pines. The name, Raiford Prison, is commonly used by the public, but the location actually refers to a correctional complex near the small town of Raiford in Union County, Florida. Today, the site includes several institutions operated by the Florida Department of Corrections. Among them stands Florida State Prison. Completed in the early 1960s to replace older prison facilities, it quickly became the state's primary maximum security prison. Its isolation was intentional. The nearest major city is hours away. Dense forests surround the complex. Few people pass through unless they have official business. That separation serves an important purpose. Maximum security prisons are designed to reduce outside risks, limit escape opportunities, and keep dangerous offenders far from populated communities. But geography alone does not explain Raiford's reputation. Its reputation comes from who lives here. And who dies here. Because Florida State Prison houses inmates convicted of some of the state's most notorious murders. Many have received multiple life sentences. Others have exhausted every appeal and now wait on Florida's death row. Every hallway reflects that reality. Every movement is planned around security. Every mistake can become deadly. And for correctional officers, simply finishing a shift safely is considered a success. Yet the prison's greatest challenge isn't simply containing violent offenders. It's managing hundreds of people who have almost nothing left to lose. That changes everything. And the daily routines inside reflect that constant tension. Entering another world. Every prison has procedures. Florida State Prison has layers. The moment staff arrive, multiple security checkpoints begin. Identification is verified. Personal belongings are limited. Electronic systems record every entrance. Weapons are secured according to strict protocol. Nothing enters casually. Inside, movement depends on schedules measured almost down to the minute. Cell doors. Meal times. Medical visits. Legal appointments. Exercise periods. Everything happens under supervision. Officers rarely assume anything is routine. Because routine can disappear in seconds. A simple escort may involve multiple officers. Some inmates wear restraints whenever they leave their housing units. Others require additional security based on behavioral history. Communication between officers never stops. Radios constantly relay updates. Doors are electronically controlled. Surveillance cameras monitor nearly every corridor. But cameras alone cannot prevent violence. Experience matters. Veteran officers often say they learn to notice tiny behavioral changes before trouble begins. An unusual silence. A missing inmate from recreation. A prisoner refusing meals. Small details sometimes prevent major incidents. Because in a prison housing violent offenders, danger rarely announces itself. It builds quietly. And nowhere is that more apparent than inside the housing units themselves. Life behind the steel door. For inmates assigned to maximum security, daily life follows a rigid pattern. Most wake early. Cell counts begin before sunrise. Officers verify every prisoner is present. Only after counts clear can the institution continue operating. Breakfast arrives through secured procedures. Depending on housing assignment, meals may be served in dining halls or delivered directly to cells. For inmates in restrictive housing, food usually passes through narrow slots built into steel doors. Those openings may seem insignificant. Yet they represent one of the few daily interactions inmates have with staff. After breakfast, some prisoners report to institutional jobs. Others remain locked inside their cells for much of the day. Educational programs, vocational training, religious services, and limited recreation depend entirely on security classification. Not everyone qualifies. Some inmates spend over 23 hours each day alone. Isolation creates its own psychological pressures. Days become difficult to distinguish. Conversations happen through concrete walls. Time moves differently. Some prisoners develop strict routines simply to maintain their mental health. Reading, writing letters, exercising inside tiny cells, keeping track of days using calendars drawn on paper. Others struggle. Depression, anxiety, anger. Years of confinement affect nearly everyone differently. But regardless of individual circumstances, one reality never changes. Every movement depends on permission. Freedom exists only within carefully controlled limits. And nowhere is control stricter than death row. That's where the atmosphere changes completely. Florida's death row. Few areas inside any American prison receive more attention than death row. Florida State Prison has served that role for decades. Men sentenced to death live separately from the general prison population under heightened security. Their daily routines differ significantly. Cells are designed for close supervision. Movement outside those cells follows strict procedures. Recreation occurs under controlled conditions. Visits remain closely monitored. Legal access continues throughout appeals. Many inmates spend years waiting. Some wait decades. During that time, court decisions, new evidence, legal challenges, and changes in state law may delay executions repeatedly. For correctional staff, death row presents unique responsibilities. Every inmate has different legal status. Every appeal changes timelines. Every execution warrant triggers months of preparation. No one knows exactly when those preparations will begin. Until suddenly, they do. And once the governor signs an execution warrant, everything inside the institution changes. What follows is unlike any other process inside the prison. And almost every detail remains carefully controlled. We'll return to that process later. Because first, it's important to understand the invisible rules governing everyday survival inside Raiford. Those rules aren't written anywhere. But ignoring them can carry serious consequences. The unwritten code. Prisons operate under official regulations. But inmates often recognize another system. An unwritten code. Its exact form varies between institutions, but certain ideas appear repeatedly. Respect. Reputation. Keeping your word. Avoiding unnecessary attention. Inside maximum security prisons, weakness can attract exploitation. Arguments over small issues may quickly escalate. Simple misunderstandings sometimes lead to violence. Experienced inmates often learn when to speak. And when remaining silent is safer. Personal property becomes important. Food, books, commissary items. Even small debts can create larger conflicts if ignored. Correctional officers work continuously to reduce opportunities for violence. Searches occur regularly. Contraband investigations remain ongoing. Housing assignments consider known conflicts. Gang intelligence units monitor developing tensions. Despite these efforts, prison remains an environment where trust is limited. Many inmates form only a handful of reliable relationships. Some choose complete isolation instead. Others align with prison gangs seeking protection. But gang membership comes with its own dangers. Leaving may not always be possible. Following orders can create new criminal charges. Refusing orders can carry consequences inside the prison itself. These power structures influence daily life more than many outsiders realize. And understanding them helps explain why officers constantly monitor even ordinary conversations. Because violence rarely appears without warning. The warning signs simply aren't always obvious. The officers who walk the tiers. Working inside Florida State Prison requires more than physical courage. It demands consistency. Officers encounter the same inmates every day. Professional boundaries become essential. Too much familiarity creates risks. Too much distance can reduce communication. Finding the balance is part of the job. Most shifts involve constant observation. Cell inspections. Security counts. Escorts. Incident reports. Medical transports. Emergency responses. Every action must follow established procedures. Because procedures protect everyone. New officers often discover that the greatest challenge isn't dramatic violence. It's remaining alert during ordinary moments. Complacency can become dangerous. Veteran staff frequently describe prison as an environment where nothing happens. Until everything happens. Training emphasizes communication, teamwork, situational awareness. Officers rarely respond to emergencies alone. Backup arrives quickly whenever possible. Despite modern technology, prison security still depends heavily on human judgment. A locked door helps. A surveillance camera helps. But experienced correctional professionals remain the institution's most important security resource. Their observations prevent countless incidents never reported outside prison walls. Still, not every situation can be prevented. Over the years, Raiford has witnessed disturbances, assaults, escape attempts, and moments that permanently changed Florida corrections. Some became national headlines. Others remained largely forgotten. One event in particular demonstrated just how quickly order inside a prison can collapse. And its lessons still influence security policies today. When order breaks down, maximum security prisons are designed to prevent chaos. But history has repeatedly shown that no prison is completely immune to violence. Florida State Prison has experienced assaults, inmate disturbances, attacks on staff, and emergency lockdowns throughout its history. Most never become national news because they are contained quickly by trained correctional officers. When an incident begins, seconds matter. An argument during recreation. A homemade weapon hidden inside a clothing seam. A confrontation over a debt. A refusal to obey an order. Any one of these situations can rapidly escalate. The first sound officers often hear is an emergency radio call. Almost immediately, movement throughout the institution changes. Nearby housing units may stop all inmate movement. Electronic doors lock. Special response teams prepare to deploy. Medical staff stand by. The priority is always the same. Regain control before violence spreads. Inside a prison, disturbances rarely stay isolated for long. One fight can trigger another. Rumors travel faster than official information. Entire housing units may become tense within minutes. That is why officers treat even small incidents seriously. Because they understand something outsiders often do not. Prison violence is unpredictable. Sometimes it grows from weeks of tension. Sometimes it begins over something that seems insignificant. A disrespectful comment. A stolen commissary item. An unpaid debt. Or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. For the inmates living there, those possibilities are part of daily life. And everyone learns to pay attention. Because recognizing danger early can mean surviving another day. Prison gangs and hidden power. Officially, the Florida Department of Corrections controls every aspect of prison life. Unofficially, inmate groups often attempt to influence parts of that environment. Like many maximum security prisons across the United States, Florida State Prison has housed inmates associated with various prison gangs and criminal organizations over the years. These groups differ greatly. Some originated inside prisons. Others began as street gangs before expanding into correctional facilities. Their influence depends on many factors. Leadership, numbers, resources, reputation, correctional intelligence. Unlike television dramas, gangs do not openly control entire prisons. Correctional officers remain responsible for institutional security. However, gang rivalries can influence inmate relationships, housing decisions, investigations, and security planning. Intelligence officers spend enormous amounts of time monitoring these groups. Letters are reviewed according to legal procedures. Recorded phone calls may reveal developing conflicts. Confidential information is carefully evaluated. Known rivalries influence housing assignments whenever possible. Preventing violence often begins long before violence actually occurs. The goal is separation. Because history has shown what can happen when rival groups collide. Still, prison gangs adapt. Leaders are transferred. Communication methods change. Influence shifts. Every new inmate enters an environment where existing alliances may already exist. Some refuse involvement entirely. Others seek protection. Some arrive already affiliated. For investigators, understanding these relationships is a constant challenge. Because prison security depends not only on locked doors, but also on information. And information can save lives. Contraband, the hidden economy. Every prison has rules about what inmates may possess. Whenever those rules are broken, a hidden economy begins to emerge. Contraband comes in many forms. Homemade alcohol. Unauthorized cell phones. Improvised weapons. Illegal drugs. Extra medication. Modified tools. Even seemingly harmless objects can become dangerous inside prison. A sharpened piece of metal no longer looks like scrap. It becomes a weapon. A simple cord becomes something entirely different. That is why routine searches never stop. Officers inspect cells regularly. Specialized canine units may search certain areas. Mail is screened under established legal guidelines. Visitors undergo security procedures. Staff members are also subject to strict professional standards and investigations when misconduct is suspected. Most correctional employees perform their duties honestly. However, history has shown that a small number of staff members across correctional systems nationwide have been arrested for attempting to smuggle contraband into prisons. The financial incentives can be significant. A phone worth a few $100s outside prison may become worth several thousand inside. The The same applies to drugs and other prohibited items. Removing contraband is an ongoing battle. Because every item recovered represents one less opportunity for violence, extortion, or organized criminal activity. Yet despite these efforts, prison officials acknowledge that eliminating contraband completely remains extremely difficult. As long as demand exists, someone will try to supply it. Solitary confinement, few areas inside any prison inspire as much debate as restrictive housing. Often called solitary confinement, these units are used for inmates who present significant security concerns or who require separation for safety reasons. Conditions vary depending on institutional policies and legal requirements. Generally, inmates spend most of the day inside single cells. Movement is tightly controlled. Meals arrive through secure openings. Exercise occurs separately. Human interaction becomes limited. Some inmates remain there only briefly. Others stay for much longer periods depending on disciplinary decisions, investigations, or security classifications. Supporters argue restrictive housing protects staff and inmates from individuals who repeatedly commit violent acts. Critics argue prolonged isolation may worsen mental health. Courts, correctional professionals, psychologists, and lawmakers continue debating its appropriate use. Inside Florida State Prison, restrictive housing is another tool used to maintain institutional security. It is not designed as comfort. It is designed for control. Whether effective or harmful often depends on individual circumstances. But one fact is difficult to dispute. Extended isolation changes people. Time loses meaning. Days become nearly identical. Some prisoners read constantly. Others exercise obsessively. Some write letters. Some stop speaking altogether. The psychological effects vary enormously. And nowhere are those effects more visible than on death row. Because there, uncertainty lasts far longer. Waiting for an execution date. Contrary to popular belief, a death sentence does not immediately lead to execution. In Florida, years, sometimes decades, can pass before an execution warrant is signed. During that time, inmates pursue multiple appeals through state and federal courts. Attorneys review trial records. New evidence may emerge. Changes in law can affect sentencing. Governors cannot schedule executions whenever they choose. The legal process must first run its course. For death row inmates, waiting becomes a way of life. Some eventually receive reduced sentences after court decisions. Others die from natural causes before their appeals conclude. Some remain incarcerated for decades without a final resolution. But once legal options are exhausted and an execution warrant is signed, everything changes. The inmate receives official notification. Security procedures become even stricter. Final legal motions accelerate. Attorneys work around the clock. Families prepare for final visits. Correctional staff begin following detailed operational plans practiced long before they are ever needed. The entire institution feels the difference. Because an execution affects far more people than the condemned prisoner alone. Officers, medical personnel, clergy, administrators, witnesses, legal officials. Everyone involved carries a responsibility unlike any other assignment inside the correctional system. And the next hours become some of the most carefully managed in American corrections. Inside Florida's execution process. Florida has used different execution methods throughout its history. For many years, executions were carried out using the electric chair, historically known as Old Sparky. Later, Florida adopted lethal injection as its primary execution method while retaining the electric chair under certain legal circumstances requested by the inmate. Every execution follows a detailed protocol established under Florida law. Witnesses arrive at designated times. Identity verification takes place. Medical personnel fulfill assigned responsibilities. Legal representatives remain available until the final moments in case courts issue emergency orders. Executions have been delayed at the last minute before. Some have been postponed only hours beforehand because of court rulings. Nothing proceeds until every legal requirement has been satisfied. For correctional officers assigned to execution duty, professionalism is essential. Many rarely speak publicly about the experience afterward. Former staff members who have discussed it often describe it as one of the most emotionally demanding responsibilities of their careers. Regardless of personal beliefs about capital punishment, the process is carried out under strict legal authority and extensive oversight. It is neither rushed nor casual. Every document, every movement, every witness, every procedure, everything is recorded. Everything is reviewed. Because the consequences cannot be reversed. And that reality weighs heavily on everyone involved. Men who waited there. Over the decades, Florida State Prison has housed many of Florida's most infamous death row inmates. Some became nationally known because of the crimes for which they were convicted. Others received attention because of lengthy appeals or unusual legal cases. Among the most widely recognized was serial killer Theodore Ted Bundy, who was executed at Florida State Prison in 1989 after being convicted of multiple murders. His execution drew intense national and international media attention. Long before sunrise, reporters gathered outside the prison. Crowds assembled nearby. The event became one of the most closely watched executions in American history. Other convicted murderers have also spent years inside Florida State Prison awaiting execution, though most never attracted the same level of public attention. For prison staff, however, notoriety means very little. Every inmate is managed according to security procedures. Fame does not change institutional rules. High-profile offenders still receive counts, meals, medical care, legal visits, security escorts. Correctional work depends on consistency. Treating one inmate differently because of media attention creates unnecessary risk. Inside prison walls, routine remains the foundation of safety. Even when the outside world focuses on a single name. The weight carried by correctional officers. When people think about maximum security prisons, they usually focus on the inmates. Far fewer consider the people who return to these walls every day by choice. Correctional officers, nurses, maintenance workers, teachers, chaplains, psychologists, administrators. For them, Florida State Prison is not simply a prison. It is their workplace. Many officers spend decades inside the same walls. They learn hundreds of inmate names. They witness men grow older. They respond to emergencies. They break up fights. They deliver tragic news. And occasionally, they lose coworkers in the line of duty. The stress is difficult for outsiders to understand. Unlike many professions, correctional officers must remain alert from the moment they enter the institution until the moment they leave. A single lapse in concentration can have life-changing consequences. Former officers have often described the emotional strain of constantly assessing danger. Every conversation, every movement, every unusual silence, every unexpected request. Everything is evaluated. Not because officers expect violence every day, but because they never know which day violence will arrive. Many develop routines to separate work from home. Some avoid discussing their jobs with family. Others struggle to leave the prison mentally, even after their shift has ended. Studies of correctional staff have found higher rates of stress-related health problems than in many other professions. Long shifts, mandatory overtime, exposure to violence, constant vigilance. These pressures accumulate over years. Yet most continue showing up. Because maintaining order inside one of America's most secure prisons depends on experienced professionals willing to do a difficult job. Their work often goes unnoticed by the public. But without them, institutions like Florida State Prison simply could not function. Growing old behind bars. Time changes everyone. Inside prison, its effects are impossible to ignore. Many inmates who entered Florida State Prison in their 20s or 30s eventually become elderly men. Some require walking aids. Others develop chronic illnesses. Many spend increasing amounts of time receiving medical treatment. Correctional systems across the United States now face a growing population of aging prisoners. Advances in healthcare, combined with lengthy sentences, mean more inmates are living into old age than ever before. For prison administrators, this creates new challenges. Medical costs increase. Housing needs change. Security remains essential, but so does healthcare. An inmate serving life without parole may spend 40 or 50 years inside prison. Over that time, prison itself changes. Correctional officers retire. Wardens change. Policies evolve. Technology advances. But the inmate remains. Some express remorse. Some continue maintaining their innocence. Others rarely speak about their crimes at all. Many will eventually die within prison walls. Not through execution, but through age or illness. For victims' families, this reality can evoke different emotions. Some believe lifelong imprisonment is justice. Others feel true closure never arrives. There are no simple answers. Only complicated human stories. The families left outside. Every violent crime creates more victims than official records can count. Behind every prison sentence are families whose lives changed forever. The families of murder victims often carry unimaginable grief. Birthdays pass without loved ones. Holidays feel incomplete. Children grow up without parents. Parents bury children. Years after a conviction, many continue living with painful memories. Court proceedings eventually end. Media attention fades. But grief often remains. At the same time, inmates also have families. Parents, brothers, sisters, children. Some maintain contact through letters and monitored phone calls. Others lose communication entirely. Relationships dissolve under the weight of years spent apart. Children become adults. Parents pass away. Entire generations change while an inmate remains inside the same prison. When an execution date is scheduled, those families experience another wave of emotional pain. The circumstances differ greatly from those of victims' families. But they are still families confronting loss. Correctional officials must balance these realities with professionalism and fairness. The institution cannot erase tragedy. It can only carry out the responsibilities assigned under the law. The day an execution takes place. Execution days begin long before sunrise. Inside the prison, schedules are adjusted. Security increases. Only authorized personnel enter restricted areas. Every assignment has been planned in advance. Witnesses arrive according to strict procedures established by law. Legal representatives remain available until the final moment. Even after an execution warrant has been signed, courts may still receive emergency filings. History has shown that executions have occasionally been delayed or postponed after last-minute legal decisions. Until the process is complete, uncertainty remains. For staff members assigned to execution duty, professionalism becomes essential. Many speak very little. Every responsibility must be performed exactly according to established procedures. Outside the prison, media organizations often gather. Families of victims. Families of the condemned. Protesters. Supporters of capital punishment. Opponents of capital punishment. Each waits for the official announcement. Inside the institution, however, emotion cannot interfere with procedure. Once the process concludes, reports are completed. Witnesses depart. The institution gradually returns to its ordinary routine. The following morning, correctional officers report for another shift. Counts continue. Meals are served. Doors open and close. Life inside the prison moves forward. Yet for many involved, the memory of that day remains for years. Myths and reality. Popular culture has created many myths about prisons like Raiford. Movies often portray constant riots, endless violence, and complete inmate control. Reality is different. Violence certainly exists. Maximum security prisons house dangerous offenders. Correctional officers face genuine risks. But most days are remarkably structured. Routine is the foundation of prison management. Without routine, order becomes impossible. Another misconception is that every inmate on death row is executed quickly. In reality, legal appeals frequently last many years. Some inmates spend decades awaiting final decisions. Others never reach execution because of changing legal circumstances or natural death. Some believe prison is easy. Others believe it is constant chaos. Neither description accurately reflects daily life inside Florida State Prison. Instead, it is a tightly controlled environment where security, routine, and law intersect every single day. It is a place shaped by discipline, procedure, and constant vigilance. Not because those inside expect the worst every hour, but because they must always be prepared for it. Why Raiford still commands respect. Florida State Prison has stood for decades as one of the state's most significant correctional institutions. Its reputation comes from many sources. Its role as Florida's primary execution facility. Its maximum security population. Its history. Its isolation. Its responsibility for housing some of the state's most dangerous convicted offenders. Yet beyond the headlines and public fascination lies another reality. Thousands of correctional professionals have dedicated their careers to maintaining order here. Medical teams provide care. Teachers educate. Religious leaders offer guidance. Maintenance crews keep the institution operating. Investigators work to prevent violence before it begins. Their efforts rarely appear in documentaries or news reports. But they remain essential to the prison's operation. Raiford represents more than punishment. It represents the difficult balance every correctional system must maintain. Protecting society. Enforcing lawful sentences. Maintaining security. Respecting constitutional rights. And carrying out responsibilities that many people would never choose to perform. Whether one supports or opposes capital punishment, Florida State Prison stands as a reminder of the enormous weight carried by the criminal justice system. It is a place where justice, accountability, tragedy, and humanity exist together. Sometimes uneasily. Sometimes painfully. But always under the watch of steel gates that close every single day. For nearly a century, the name Raiford has carried a unique place in Florida's history. It has witnessed changing laws, evolving correctional practices, controversial executions, notorious inmates, and the daily work of thousands of correctional professionals committed to maintaining order inside one of America's most secure prisons. For the men confined here, every day is governed by routine, restriction, and consequence. For the officers who walk these corridors, every shift demands discipline, judgment, and constant awareness. And for the families connected to this place, whether through crime, justice, or loss, its impact often lasts a lifetime. Behind the concrete walls and razor wire are stories that rarely fit into simple categories. Some are stories of violence. Some are stories of accountability. Others are stories of regret, resilience, or irreversible choices. Whatever perspective one holds, Florida State Prison remains one of the most consequential institutions in the American correctional system, a place where society's most serious punishments are carried out under the rule of law, far from public view. Its gates may keep the world outside, but the questions it raises about justice, punishment, and redemption continue long after those gates close. Thank you for watching this documentary. If you found this story informative, consider subscribing for more carefully researched documentaries exploring the realities of prisons, crime, and the justice system. If there's another prison or criminal case you'd like to see covered next, let us know in the comments. Until next time, thank you for watching.